What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I do feel like at this point right now in Motorfest, I'm most likely going to be someone that's probably throwing too many ideas out there. But of course, at the end of the day, I really do just want this game to be better. I also do know the potential that Motorfest does obviously have, but looking at this right now, I am going to go over some summit changes that would make this game even better. And I do feel like a lot of players are most likely looking for that experience. Now for this though, we do know the summits are obviously going to be 6 main events and also 3 skills. Can we all agree in some ways the races are probably going to be kind of boring, but hear me out for a quick second on why I think that is. Now we do know back in the Crew 2 you're going to have many events back then that are of course going to be 6, and also the exact same 3 skills as well. But the difference here though is in Motorfest you're going to have 6 events that are basically the exact same thing. So for example, in this summit right here, you guys are going to notice all the events are racing. They are going to be the racing motorcycles and the cars themselves, which I would say a lot of players are going to go, well, yeah, like a lot of the racing classes are fun, but why don't we have like different events in there? Like, why don't we have different classes in the summits? We do know back in the Crew 2 we had different classes in each summit, and I do feel like that's probably going to be one of the best ways to mix them up. We also are looking at another summit right now, guys, that is going to be a mix of a few different events here, which I would say this one is probably going to be on a better track for that matter. Also, looking at the details of it, you're going to notice you do get rewards and stuff like that, but looking at this one, we're going to have a few racing events, 2 Street Tier 2, and then finally making that 1 Rally Raid event here. I do feel like having something like that with more mixed events is the best way to do them. We are also going to notice we have another bullseye, a slalom, and then a speed trap. And then on top of that, we also are going to have the racing events, 3 Street Tier 2, as I mentioned before, in a rally raid. I have to admit right now, guys, I really do feel like the summits in this game have to be mixed a bit more. And having more events like this is probably going to be like the best way to do it. The reason why I do say that is having, like, yes, you could probably do a summit with all Street Tier 2 or, like, all racing like we did see in the previous summit. But my issue with that, though, is a lot of players are probably going to want a different mix of events in there for a few different reasons. We also do know that one summit based on racing was probably an issue. There was people using a car in a bike event or, like, vehicles that do not belong in certain events. This is probably going to be an exploit that many players might end up seeing. I also do know it's going to be a big discussion of like these shortcuts and stuff like that in the summits. But we do know with certain classes a lot of players are most likely going to find more of those. Now I do know on a different side of this, so some people are probably going to be like, yeah, I understand what you're saying, Block, but we do know the summits are probably not going to change, or at least some of these ideas might actually be good. The question is though, are we going to see a difference in any of them? Now the reason why I do want to make more videos about the summits is we can all agree on one thing here. The summits are going to be a very important part of the crew in general, like back in the Crew 2 as well. And we are most likely going to see this as a thing in the future in Motorfest, and who knows what they might end up doing for these in the future. So I would say going over different ideas and most likely making the summits the best they can possibly be is going to be insanely important for the future of this game, and we probably can agree as well that many players most likely enjoy doing the summits a lot more than doing the grand races at the moment until, they most likely add more events into the grand races or like even PvP for that matter. I would also say seeing the summits being a lot more like in-depth or like even being a lot more intense in some ways to where shortcuts might be eliminated or like, certain things you cannot use like even your pro settings on every vehicle or even running something like a monster truck in like one weird event where it probably doesn't even belong being in there. A lot of players might be like, well, yeah, using a plane in an event like that probably makes absolutely no sense, and you would easily be correct because it doesn't. But I do admit, though, running a weird vehicle in an odd class race like that is so much dang fun, though. Now, I would say at this point, we can all probably agree and go, yeah, like having mixed events like that, like using weird vehicles in different races, or like, running vehicles in different class events that probably make no sense would be so much dang fun. But the only issue I do have with this, though, guys, is yeah, we are going to notice that many of the events in the Crew Motorfest are different than the Crew 2, and we do know this game for right now at least does have less events than that game did. I do really believe this is most likely going to change as the seasons do progress, and we probably get a lot more playlists and events coming out, but From what I have seen from many people talking about the summits or like going over the events in them, I would say the biggest thing right now that would most likely make this better is going to come down to making the events a bit more mixed up instead of being like all street tier 2 or even having like all racing events in there. Don't get me wrong though, having some of the summits themed around a certain class is pretty awesome, especially depending on like the platinum reward being like a car in like the racing category, and having like an entire summit based on racing might be pretty cool, but I also would say having different events in that summit would be a lot better. There is going to be around 14 or so classes, I believe, in this game right now that you could have in a summit. We're also only going to have 6 different events in there, so like you could easily have like a racing, a street tier 2, a tier 1, have a rally, a rallycross, and a motocross event in there. I would say a lot of players might not like certain classes being in the summits, but I also do feel like a lot of players are most likely not going to want to have the exact same class being in every single summit basically every time, or like even before, guys, on some of the old summits you would only see like street tier 2, then like only hypercars being basically back and forth. I do feel like in some ways, yes, it is obviously going to be fun. We do know street tier 2 and hypercars are probably like the most used classes, but we have like another 10 other classes you can run in these. And at this point, though, I would almost guarantee I'm probably not the only person going, yeah, bring on like the Rally Raid, Rally Cross. Even a monster truck and motocross event would be insane. But I would almost guess, guys, at this point, we are most likely going to see more of these events showing up in the future. And who knows which events we might end up seeing in the future playlists that are coming out in the upcoming seasons. Overall, I have to admit, I am insanely excited to see what they end up doing with the summits. I would also like to know what you guys think about this in the comments below. What would you say is going to be the top 3 things you would end up changing in the summits, like legit right now? But even then, though, I am excited to see what they actually do in these summits in the upcoming seasons.